Hello and welcome back to Tinker Talks Guns. A fair argument can be made that the Dardic pistol is the worst pistol ever put into production. They don't work, they're not well made, and they weren't a good idea to begin with. But I have something worse. The FP45 Liberator. This is a modern reproduction from vintage ordnance, but it is part for part copy of the original. And as awful as it is, it actually works. And that's what makes it worse than the Dardic pistol. Because at least the Dardic pistol you can't really hurt yourself with easily. This thing is painful on so many levels. It's kind of amazing. So, before we get started, I'd like to thank my supporters on Patreon. This all costs money: ammunition, reloading components, guns, and your contributions help more than you know. I'd also like to thank channel benefactors, those individuals and businesses that have given me material assistance in making these videos with contributions of ammo, the use of their facilities, letting me show you guns and shoot them. So thank you very much to you all. Now, if you'd like to join my supporters on Patreon, there is a link in the description below. So the FP45 Liberator. FP stands for Flare Projector, because this was a super secret project, and they even had weird names for all the components. And what it is a single shot 45 ACP striker fired, built as cheaply as possible. In 1942, these cost $2.10 each, which is the equivalent of $35, $40 today. Every part is either cast or stamped from metal. The barrels were not rifled because this gun had a very special purpose. It came in a box with 10 rounds of ammunition and a dowel to eject spent cases. And 5 of the rounds of ammunition will fit under this cover on the butt, which I'll show you in the tabletop. And even though it came with 10 rounds of ammunition, it was only meant to be fired once, because the purpose of these was to be distributed to resistance fighters behind enemy lines. And they would use it to shoot an enemy soldier and take his guns, and then presumably hand this off to somebody else, or keep it as a backup or whatever. I can't imagine anybody wanting to fire one more than once. Trust me on this. You'll see. It weighs a pound. And it's really crude. But it does function. Now, these came with a cartoon sheet to show how it all works, which I'll show you in the tabletop, how it works, not the sheet. I don't have the sheet. 10 rounds of ammunition in a little box, and they were meant to be dropped en masse behind enemy lines. And this was conceived by the OSS, the predecessor of the CIA. And over the course of the summer of 1942, 300 workers at Guide Lamp Division of General Motors built approximately 1 million of these. And there were issues. Only a few thousand of them ever actually got into the hands of partisans or were used for their intended purpose. We don't actually know how many were used for their intended purpose, which was to kill an enemy soldier and take his guns. The rest were destroyed. And they're quite rare now. They're go for anywhere from $1,000 to $5,000 for original guns. This one is from a vintage ordnance, and they are $520 if you want one. And they have a variety of accessories, so you can actually recreate the original kit that these came in for, $600, $650, whatever. And I suppose there are enough people that want them that they're staying in business. Now, these were deployed in the Philippines and supposedly in parts of Europe. I have Been unable to track down exact details of how many and where, but only a few thousand of them actually got used. And as I say, the rest of them were destroyed. So, what's it like to shoot? Let's have a look at that. Fuck me. Oh my God. As you may have gathered from the video, what they're like to shoot is bloody horrible. Recoil is severe, as you might guess, from a 1 pound fixed breech pistol shooting a 45 ACP. And when the gun fires, recoil tends to knock the striker back far enough for it to twist slightly sideways and produce a nice blood blister catching the web of my thumb. I have to look at this on the tabletop for you to really get the sense of it. First thing that surprised a lot of people about the Liberator is that it is not particularly small. It's over 5.5 inches long and 5 inches high, and quite chunky thick, about 1 inch thick. And it is, I'm going to go with crudely made. You can see a lot of spot welds. Every part of this gun is either cast or mostly stamped out of sheet metal. And you can see the seams are not highly finished, nor would you expect them to be. And on this example, all the edges have been rounded off at least, which I am not sure is true of the originals. It has sights, which are remarkably usable, although that doesn't particularly help because I'm not sure they have any particular relationship to where the bullets hit. Some people have obtained good accuracy with these modern reproductions. Some people haven't. So it's all stamped, spot welded, and pinned, or riveted rather, because all the pins appear to be riveted, as they should be. And this is not the simplest possible pistol to make, but it is the simplest to mass produce a lot of them in a hell of a big hurry. And as I said, it's a one-use pistol. It doesn't have to be super nice, and they sure aren't. Weighs 1 pound, which means recoil is pretty brutal. There is a stamped floor plate here, and you can store 5 rounds of 45 ACP in there. And to load the weapon, you pull the striker all the way back and rotate it to the side, pull up the rear sight, which does actually have a spring detent helping it to stay in place, or something that feels like a spring detent. And you drop a round of 45 ACP in, close the breech, and rotate the striker back, and it is ready to fire. Now, the modern examples must, for legal reasons, have a rifled barrel, which I'm not sure you can see there, but it is rifled. And the trigger pull is sort of semi-double action. You can actually see it move the striker back slightly. And it is crunchy, and you know, while it's heavy for a single action pistol, okay, it's just heavy and a little crunchy. But again, this is not a finely made target pistol. It is not made to be shot thousands of rounds through. And trust me, you're not going to want to. It is not a good time. So there's really very little to it. The whole gun has only 23 parts, which I believe includes this base plate. And they were provided in a kit with a wooden dowel to knock empty cases out, and 10 rounds of 45 ACP, which I am sure they expected to be a lifetime supply for this pistol, given its intended use, which, as stated, was to, shoot an enemy soldier in the back at point-blank range and take his stuff. And then presumably pass this on to somebody else who might conceivably have a use for it. And this cast piece, I'm not sure what it's made out of. It might be steel. I don't know. Let's try a magnet. It is not steel. It is steel. No, it isn't. Okay. These are really, really strong magnets. These are neodymium. And so, yeah, they will stick to the alignment pin right through the aluminum. So, there's not a lot to say about this because there's not a lot to it. It's just, it is what it is. It's a dead, simple, disposable pistol. And like I said, they made about 1 million of them in 3 months over the summer of 1942. You can conceivably lower the striker. Why you would do so on a live round, I have no idea, because the way this is configured, if you do and drop it, it's going to go off. And that could be very inconvenient. Although, on the bright side, at least it wouldn't be going off in your hand, which is definitely a plus. One of the reasons that the FP45 saw such limited use is that theater commanders knew that peace would come eventually, and they didn't want hundreds of thousands of untraceable guns distributed randomly among the population. This was felt as a matter of policy to be what we call a bad idea, because war sucks. The aftermath of war is often unfair and sometimes sucks almost as bad. And the idea of hundreds of thousands of pistols in the hands of pissed off, recently liberated people was not an appealing one. And as I say, in its defense, and it's really its only defense, is they do function. And this is what makes them worse than the Dardic pistol, because since it functions, you might actually feel like you want to fire it. And firing it is not fun. It's an experience that I'm glad I had, but I don't ever want to do it again. Anyway, great piece of history, and it's super cool that you can get modern reproductions of it. And thank you very much, the collector who loaned me this one for the purpose of this video. So, if you like the video, please hit the like button below. It really helps the channel. Subscribe if you want to see more content like this. And that pretty much wraps it up for this time. So, I hope this finds you well. Stay safe, take care, and we'll talk to you again real soon. Oh, and P.S. It's still not worse to shoot than a Detonix Pocket 9.